Welcome to International Definition. My name is Kenneth Freelain, and I'm going to be your host for today's edition of International Definition. Today on International Definition, we're going to feature the engineering tribute to the Presidential Inauguration of January 20th, 2013. Today, we're going to receive some information about the North American Water and Power Alliance. The North American Water and Power Alliance was conceived in the 1950s by the United States Army Corps of Engineers. Certain projects were called great projects, and one of the great projects involved the development of more water resources for the United States. The planners envisioned the diversion of water resources from some rivers in Alaska south through Canada by way of the Rocky Mountain Trench and other routes to the United States. And the entire project would involve 369 smaller and separate construction projects. The water would enter the United States through northern Montana. There, the water would be diverted to the headwaters of rivers like the Colorado River and others. The water would generate hydroelectric power as it passed through dams. The water supply would double the total amount of fresh water available to the lower 48 states, with its major focus being on the western states. This would solve the water shortage problems of the West for the foreseeable future. The amount of water available would in fact be so great that some water would be left over for use by Mexico by way of the Colorado River. By the way, today, the Colorado River is significantly depleted as it enters Mexico. The United States Army Corps of Engineers has studied this project in the late 1950s and in the early 1960s. This project was very close to realization. Washington State Senator Scoop Jackson was a significant sponsor. Senator Jackson was a person who believed in this project. The project was opposed by public sentiment in Canada. Recently, there has been a resurgence in the effort to implement NAWAPA, the North American Water and Power Alliance, as a result of the activities of Lyndon LaRouche and his LaRouche Pact. Now, let's watch a video which will provide us with some additional information about this proposed engineering project.
It is an honor and a privilege for me to present to you the President of the United States.
Thank you very much. I don't think there is any more valuable lesson for a president or member of the House and Senate than to fly as we have flown today over some of the bleakest land in the United States, and then to come to a river and see what grows next to it, and come to this city and come to this town and come to this platform and know how vitally important water is. I hope that those of us who hold positions of public responsibility in 1962 are as far-seeing about the needs of this country in 1982 and 1992 as those men and women were 30 years ago who began to make this project possible. What are we going to do in 1962, beginning today, to determine what projects we should develop so that by the end of this century, when there are 300 million people in the United States, that there will be available to them land and water and light and power and resources and places to live and places to rest and places to work. So we salute this project today, and we salute those who made it possible. And we look to the future, and we look to the past. And we commit ourselves in 1962, not only to celebrate this project, but to move ahead in all the other areas, stretching from California to Cape Cod, Massachusetts, in building this country up. Every member of Congress, everyone in the executive branch, from the President on, in the field of national resources, has to plan during their period of administration or of office for the next generation, because no project that we plan today will be beneficial to us. Anything we begin today is for those who come after us. And just as those who began something years ago make it possible for us to be here, I hope we'll fulfill our responsibility to the next generation that's going to follow us. Those people who come here from abroad, what they want to see is the Tennessee Valley. 10 years from now, they'll want to see this project. And I hope in space and on the ground, this country will continue its march forward. Thank you.
American than to come here to South Dakota and realize here in this state and in this country there is being built the largest dam of its kind in the world. It is a source of pleasure to me as president, therefore, to come here on this occasion. When we are inclined to take these wonders for granted, let us remember that only a generation or two ago, all the great rivers of America, the Missouri, the Columbia, the Mississippi, the Tennessee, ran to the sea unharnessed and unchecked. Their power potential was wasted. Their economic benefits were sparse, and their flooding caused an appalling destruction of life and of property.
He'll deliver his message at the Mormon Tabernacle in Salt Lake City, an institution universally known for the music of its great choir.
He has moved.
20 inches a year. This state knows that the control of water is the secret of the development of the West. And whether we use it for power or for irrigation or for whatever purpose, no drop of water west of the 100th parallel should flow to the ocean without being used. And to do that requires the dedicated commitment of the people of the states of the West, working with the people of all the United States who have such an important equity in the richness of this part of the country. We will triple the population of this country in the short space of 60 or 70 years. And we want those who come after us to have the same rich inheritance that we find now in the United States. And I see the closest interrelationship between the strength of the United States here at home and the strength of the United States around the world. There is one great natural development here in the United States which has had in its own way a greater effect upon the position and influence and prestige of the United States almost than any other act we've done. You know what it is? It's the Tennessee Valley. Nearly every leader of every new emerging country that comes to the United States wants to go to New York, to Washington, and the Tennessee Valley, because they want to see what we were able to do with the most poverty-ridden section of the United States in the short space of 30 years by the wise management of our resources. What happens here in this country affects the security of the United States and the cause of freedom.
As I move through the West, and especially in this state and the other states where water is short, I realize that nearly all of the standard of living which we enjoy in this part of the United States has been due partly to our own efforts, the generation which is now here, but really even more to the generation that went before. The people who started in the early 1920s, for example, to organize the distribution of water along the basin. The people who began to talk many years ago about what we're now putting into practice. This state, this section of the United States, of course, the key is water. And unless we organize every drop to be of service to mankind, this state is going to stand still. You can't possibly grow. Once the water level remains the same, once the amount of water you have for use for irrigation and reclamation and power remains the same, this state stands still. So water is the key. The management of water, I think, is the key that will open a very bright future. You will only perceive it very slightly in the next few years. But those who come after you, they'll know it, and they'll remember with appreciation. I'm particularly glad because Senator Morse has preached the doctrine of the wise use of water with, I think, more vigor almost than any member of the United States Senate. He's chairman of the subcommittee on irrigation and reclamation. He learned this lesson the hard way, as anyone must who lives here. I come from a section of the country where we waste water, where we seek ways to get rid of it, where we seek to have it go to the ocean as quickly as possible. It's just the reverse here. And therefore, those of us who come from a section where water is in surplus, I think it's valuable for us to come and feel that hot sun and fly over this country and see only on occasion where there are water resources, and then realize how important this project is. But the important thing to remember is for 50 years, men have been talking about this project. It's now a reality. What are we going to do now so that 50 years from now, the people who live in Utah and the United States will feel that in the early 60s, we made the proper decision for the management of our resources. So this is going to make a profound difference to this state. It stands in the finest tradition of federal-state cooperation, public and private coordination. This is going to be a tremendous blessing.
The Calgary Herald, Wednesday, March 18, 1964. A 500-mile-long water reservoir in Banff and Jasper, and a canal system through Alberta linking the prairies with the Great Lakes are two segments of a mammoth project envisioned by a U.S. engineering and construction company. Scope of the project calls for establishment of an international governing body from Canada, U.S., and Mexico. The Parsons Company suggests it might be called the North American Water and Power Alliance. It would take 30 years and 4 million new Friday, March 20th, 1964. An imaginative proposal has just been announced to develop North American water resources on the massive scale that today's growing water needs demand in half that time, at an estimated cost, including financing, of $100 billion. John Davis, parliamentary assistant to Canada's Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson, recently said in an interview, "I'm convinced that in the long term, it would all Samuel be in Canada's Nelson, general manager and chief engineer of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, believes it should be carefully studied." Los Angeles Times, Sunday, March 22nd, 1964. Is visionary planning the answer to the West's endless struggle to find more water for its growing cities? Experts are puzzling over that question in the light of a new master plan to tap streams and a system of canals, aqueducts, and dams would take 100,000 workers 30 years. Washington, D.C. Post-Times Herald, May 2nd, 1964. The Works Committee has set up a special subcommittee under the chairmanship of Senator Frank E. Moss of Utah to study its engineering feasibility. Construction of the project would provide, directly and indirectly, an idle dream or a fantastic pork barrel requiring virtually an endless flow of federal tax dollars? The Senate Public Works Committee, headed by Michigan Senator Pat McNamara, doesn't think so. Neither does Senator Frank Moss, whose special subcommittee is scheduled to make a preliminary feasibility report to the full committee in about 6 months. The Senate Public Works Committee has nearly completed an engineering feasibility study of the $100 billion Parsons Plan. If the Senate subcommittee's present studies indicate feasibility of the project, the U.S. will probably ask to have the matter placed in the hands of the International Joint Commission. September 15, 1964. The plans of Minister of Parliament Jack Davis for the diversion of northern waters to central Canada and the United States are passing the stage of imaginative conception to that of practical consideration. The conception is magnificent. By all known facts about the Water and Power Alliance concept, the directors of the Western Canada Reclamation Association will forward a resolution to the federal government, urging a full investigation of the proposal. The meeting has had North America-wide publicity February 22nd, 1965. What do you call a plan that would divert 36 trillion gallons of water annually from Alaska and northern Canada southward to 33 U.S. states, 7 Canadian provinces, and 3 Mexican states? That would irrigate 40 million acres of land in 17 western states, more than is currently being irrigated. That would yield 100 million kilowatts of electricity, equivalent to 75 Hoover dams? You call it NAWAPA, the North American Water and Power Alliance. That's what. And for $80 billion spent over a period of 30 years, NAWAPA would be the greatest and most
July 20th, 1965. Mr. K.D. McFarland, Manager of Public Relations, Ralph M. Parsons Company. Dear Ken, I enjoyed the visit that I had with you and Mr. Parsons while we waited to see the Vice President. I'm glad that we did have a brief chat with him. As you can see, his time is always overfilled, and it is hard to break in for a visit of any length. However, he was happy to see you, and has mentioned to me since we returned to Washington that he was glad to get acquainted with Mr. Parsons, and he was looking forward to the material on the NAWAPA project. 5 of us from the Congress met at lunch last week and decided to open correspondence and communication with some of the Canadian parliamentarians that we met in Ottawa earlier in the year. I'll let you know if anything grows out of this effort. Sincerely, Frank Moss. August 12, 1965. The President, the White House, Washington, D.C. Dear Mr. President, I have been honored to be invited twice during the past week to witness the signing of bills dealing with our water resources. The River Basin Planning Bill and the Saline Water Conversion Water Bill are both landmarks along the way in meeting a problem that is pressing down on us more severely every day. As you know, I wholeheartedly supported both of these bills and believe that we need to increase our efforts in these areas. I do believe there is another area that's not getting its full attention yet, and I would like to have an opportunity to talk with you about it, or better still, have a chance to bring along a colored film which I have available to show you the concept of bringing large amounts of fresh, pure water from Alaska and northern Canada down through the entire United States and on to Old Mexico. This plan's called NAWAPA. Although I've mentioned this to you in offhand conversations, I realize that your time is at such a premium that you have had no opportunity to make further inquiry about it, and I've hesitated to press for time to discuss it with you because of the many, many other things that you have to command your time and attention. If, however, you could arrange a time of 30 minutes or so, I would like to come down and bring with me George Mahon, Sid Yates, and Biz Johnson from the House, Clint Anderson, Tommy Kuchik from the Senate, perhaps 2 or 3 other people. Just take time to see the film and to explain to you the concept of this idea, maybe discuss very briefly what could and should be done to move along on bringing the concept to a concrete plan. Would you please send word if this is possible? Sincerely, Frank Moss.
This motion picture is about the North American Water and Power Alliance, NAWAPA. NAWAPA has been conceived as one possible solution to help the collection and distribution segments of the overall continental water management problem. In terms of water, power, flood control, transportation, and recreational facilities, more than 33 of the states would directly benefit. In Canada, 7 provinces and 1 territory would directly benefit, as would regions in northern Mexico. For example, some areas are at the mercy of too much water, while others suffer from lack of sufficient supplies. And in other regions still, the priceless resource pours unused and wasted into the sea. The shortage of water supplies is not a local problem. It is a continental problem. In overall planning by the Ralph M. Parsons Company, the NAWAPA concept takes advantage of the geographical and climatological factors of our continent. Only water which is surplus now or in the foreseeable future.
September 3rd, 1965. Dear colleague, I am writing to call your attention to a resolution I have introduced, Senate Concurrent Resolution 55, which provides it to be the sense of Congress that the President refer to the International Joint Commission, the subject of the North American Water and Power Alliance, with instructions that it be fully studied and that a detailed engineering survey be conducted on it. The resolution will be on the desk for co-sponsorship through Wednesday, September 8th. Sincerely, Frank Moss.
Dear Ted, acknowledging your good note of September 3rd, I am confident I would vote with you on your resolution. With every good wish, sincerely, Stuart Symington,
Dear Ted,
Senator,
Missouri. It will be a pleasure to join you as a co-sponsor on this resolution, which covers the subject so vitally important to this hemisphere. My commendations to you for the excellent work you are doing in regards to this project. Sincerely, Paul Fannin, United States.
The possibility of developing a water supply in the North for use in the United States should be of concern to all of us. Sincerely, Mike Monroney, Senator, Oklahoma.
I'm glad that you were able to join us for today's edition of International Definition. Today on International Definition, we examine the North American Water and Power Alliance, also known as NAWAPA. We did this as a part of the engineering tribute to the Presidential Inauguration of January 20th, 2013. And now, until our next broadcast, I'm your host, Kenneth Freelain, thanking you for joining us today.